Nice to have Betty on our team, isn't it?
Yes.
She will be missed. Today, guys, this is just straight me. But thank you. There were two questions that I wanted to answer this morning that I've been pondering this week as I've been thinking about what I would share with you today. And one of the questions was, how am I doing in terms of expressing my divinity? And I thought about it and I thought, well, you know, I have brown eyes. I don't have to do anything to express that I have brown eyes. It's just part of my makeup. So we are expressing our divinity simply because we are. We are the children of God. And regardless of whether you're sharing your divinity in shadow or whether you're sharing it in terms of really good works, it all makes up the whole, doesn't it? Spirit gave me this wonderful metaphor this last week that we go to movies to watch a story, and in that movie we are watching the good guys and the bad guys. We're watching them eat, drink, make love, drive cars, blow up stuff, or paddle down a river, whatever it is, the story that we happen to choose to watch, or to fly the Enterprise. And but when we leave, it's just the one movie. And so it occurred to me that in expressing our divinity, I have my story, you have yours. This little town has its story because we're all contributing to the Oakhurst story, to the Madera County story, to the California story, to the United States story, to the global story. And then it goes on to our solar system. Each planet is doing its thing as it blasts through the universe. And this particular solar system contributes to the story that the Milky Way is, and on and on and on. It's all God. So the second part of what I wanted to share with you today is, in that particular case, since God is love, and I have to say that in this particular story that we're living, that sometimes love seems not quite so apparent, doesn't it? And yet we are taught that God is love, that it permeates anything and everything, and all we have to do is just simply shift our focus from, like Patty said, from our fear-based, scary thoughts to our love thoughts. We are living prodigal sons, people. We can be as frightened, and I went through a dark shadow this week where I scared myself half to death. And of course, it was just my pain body was up to feed. That was basically it. Because in essence, as soon as I passed through it, Spirit showed me how untrue that whole story was. And yet, when I get into that space, again, like, we don't know what's going on, and the appearance is something very frightening is happening, i.e. a terrorist or whatever situation we find ourselves in. If we can just stop for a minute, breathe, pull ourselves back into presence, we can realize that here we are, this is our now, there's no violence here. Right now in my soul, there is no violence. Now I may get in my car this afternoon and somebody cut me off and I have a different thought. But I had an experience last Saturday which proves my point, and also I had to stop and think. I have to practice, I have to walk my walk, I have to practice what I preach. And I had a new client come to the shop, but she had a hard time finding me for some reason, and she ended up turning into the parking lot of the guy who has the shop next door to me. And she said that when she came into the shop finally, she said that he had tried to talk her into, he had tried to sabotage me and tried to get her to sit in his chair. And at first I was appalled and angry and all that, and I thought, wait a minute, we're all one. So I think what's really happening here is he's simply mirroring back to me my own fear, my own poverty level consciousness, and I can stop and bless him for what he's going through. See, because as far as I know, he doesn't have the belief system and the support system that I have. And so I could bless him. And I also blessed him with prosperity, because that's one of the things that is one of my greatest teachers this time around. So, and the other metaphor that I would share with you as I talk to you about living with an open heart is that Spirit gave me another brilliant metaphor. And he said, ego is your Michelangelo, and our spiritual nature, our souls, are the statue David. So each time our ego finds a little imperfection, something that comes up that needs to be addressed in our soul's evolution, out comes the chisel and the hammer, and we take that tiny, tiny little bit off as we move back to remembering who we are. But I want to share with you today a couple of stories about me and my journey to living with an open heart. And some of you know, maybe some of you don't know, that I was born with the sight, the gift of clairvoyance. And I have been talking to angels since I was a wee thing. And I have worked very hard this lifetime to strengthen that voice, because it's so very important to me. To have that constant, loving connection with Spirit, it means everything in the world to me, and I don't know how people function without it, because that's just who I am. So in my journey on learning how to have an open heart, once upon a time, it was here in Oakhurst. I was on my way home from work, and I came up on a little doe that had just been hit by a car. And at the same time that I swung my car around to assist in order to stop traffic because of what was going on, the two neighbors that lived on either side of the street came out to see what was going on and assist in that situation. And there was a really sweet little gentle, kind man that came out, very sensitive. And we were assessing the situation, and she was in shock, of course, but her legs were broken and she wasn't going anywhere. And he said, should I go get my gun? And I said, absolutely. And he says, well, I can go get it, but I don't have the heart to pull the trigger. And at that point, the gentleman across the street said, well, I can. And so after it was all over and I was continuing on my way home, she came to me in my mind, and she said, my name is Flora. And I could see her in this beautiful woodland scene with a herd of deer around her. And she said, thank you so very much for helping me in my journey. And at that moment, my heart completely opened, and this green light of pure heart shot out of my chest. My reason for being there, she was my teacher in showing me what an open heart looked like. So then the next story that I would share with you is when I had my ex-husband's ex-wife come up to the house for dinner one time. And it was Christmas time. She was here to visit with her daughters. And she noticed some placemats that I had on the table and commented on how nice she thought they were. So it was Christmas time, and I ran down. They were not expensive. I got them at Target and went down and got her a set for Christmas. And you have to understand that those of us, there are some of you here that worked with me and Ulrich Bold when he was here from Germany on the family constellation work. And he said, never ever dishonor the loves of your beloved that went before you. Because when you do that, you dishonor yourself. It's a negative impact on your very self. He said, the thing is that they are in the past, and this is your time with your beloved now. So always honor who went before you. And so I did. I have always been impressed with Lydia. She raised his 5 children. And she is a beautiful woman and a beautiful mother. And of course, I honor her and the life she's had. So anyway, everybody was opening their gifts in the Christmas, around the Christmas tree. And she was absent. She didn't have money to buy gifts with, so she was in the kitchen cleaning up. And I took my box into the kitchen and I handed it to her, and she said, for me? And I said, of course for you. And she opened it and she saw what was inside, and that's the first time, and hopefully not the last, that I felt her heart open wide, and she bathed me in green light. She was so loving, and we're friends today, even though we have a language barrier, but she never forgets my birthday, and I never forget hers. And it is such a beautiful perspective on what we can achieve by knowing that we're one with each other. And then the other story that I would have tell you is that my father, bless his heart, and he needs a lot of them, took me to see a Catholic spiritual healer one time named Sister Josie. And Sister Josie was a Catholic healer. And she had been in bed, the story goes, she had been very ill for 10 years. And when she got out of bed, she was so surrendered to God's will. She laid hands on people and they walked out of there. And in her dining room, which was an old 20s, probably a mansion, her dining room was probably half the size of this. I mean, it was a huge house. And inside her, she didn't have any furniture in there, but there was 6 deep, 4, 5, 6 deep of crutches, wheelchairs, canes, and walkers completely around the whole room. And so anyway, we were sitting in the foyer basically in these 2 little shiny chairs, and I heard her coming down the stairs, and I went to stand at the bottom of the stairs, and when I saw her come down the stairs, she had probably about a 4-foot in diameter light of white and pink that emanated from her to the point that I burst into tears. And the thought occurred to me, this is the closest thing I will come to in this lifetime to know what it was like to stand in Jesus' presence. People asked me, why didn't you ever go see her again? And I said, she changed my DNA that day. I walked out of there a different person. And she has been my role model for what I want to be when I grow up. So where am I? So, you know, the thing is that I'm beginning to understand, and what I would like to do is I go through these things that I wrote down this morning about what it is for us to live with an open heart, and I can tell you that if you're anything like me, living with an open heart is scary. Our ego would like to say, oh no, you mustn't do that, because there are people out there that can hurt you. It's been done before. I mean, you've been kicked around since you were a kid, right? I mean, therefore, you should not live with a broken heart. But when I went to the Light Institute years ago, at Chris Griscom's Light Institute in Galisteo, New Mexico, and my facilitator said, you know, Jenny, the things that you think are your strengths are actually your weaknesses, and the things that you think are your weaknesses are actually your strengths. And at that point, it was my intelligence that I relied on, not my heart. And so I understand that today, that she was trying to coach me in that coming from the heart. Can you imagine that the entire universe lines up to support us in living by the heart? And by healing that heart, by allowing yourself to be loving in the face of whatever comes your way, think about the contribution that you're making to the poor little guy or animal or whatever living form it is, how it benefits from you being willing to be vulnerable, to stand in the strength of love. So these are some of and this is just my stuff. You guys, it might be fun sometime for you to make up your own list about what it takes to live by your own heart. But here we go. So give 100% of what you are today. It may be 75% that you've got, or it may be 10, or it may be a negative 30, but give your best. And allow yourself to be where you are. Don't think you should be this, or you should be that, or I should go to the gym, or I should blah, blah, blah. Be present in the now, and give your best with what you have right this minute. Be in service to God, knowing that everything you do, every person that you meet, is